We're learning the second Sikha in Chelik Yud Ches on page 196 from Parshas Kairach. This is a Sikha, a very fundamental Sikha, which will discuss the subject of Hashgacha Pratis as it relates to Yidden, Chlal Hashgacha Pratis, the Shitta of the Baal Shem Tov, and the Rebbe will explain how what the Rambam says in Meir Nevuchim is not a contradiction to the Shitta of the Baal Shem Tov, and some other details regarding Hashgacha Pratis, specifically the power of Hashgacha Pratis Menegeh to Yidden. In the Heimtige Sedre wird erzählt. So we learn in this week's Parsha the story as the Rebbe hat gesagt to Moshe Aaron. That the Rebbe says to Moshe and Aaron as follows: Hibadlu mitoich ha'eda zois, separate from the congregation, va'achale oisam keroga, and I will destroy them in one moment. Moshe and Aaron both argued with Hashem and said, Kei lalekeya ruchais l'chol basa. The Eibishter, which is the lalekeya ruchais, as Rashi will explain what that means. Ha'ish echad yechta. Is it just one person that sins? Val kol eida tiktzaif. And the anger of Hashem is on the entire congregation. So, the tam was far der taina. Ha'ish echad yechta. Val kol eida tiktzaif. So before they argued and said, how is it possible that one individual sins and Hashem should be angry at everyone? Haben sie maktu gewend die Werte, the minyan, Keil Elekeya Ruchais L'chol Basa. They refer to the Eibishter with the title of being the Elekeya Ruchais. What does this mean? What does this title of Elekeya Ruchais mean? Is Musber in Pirish Rashi. So it's explained in Rashi. Was Teitstop, so Rashi interprets, Keil Elekeya Ruchais means Yedeya Machshavis. The Eibishter knows the thoughts of people. Vibalt Lefanecha Gluyais Kol HaMachshavis. Since before Hashem, all thoughts are open. And you know who sinned. If one person sins, and the anger of Hashem is on the entire congregation, so Hashem responds and says, Yofa Marta, you spoke well. I know, and I will let know, who sinned and who did not. This is the pshat of a lekeya ruchais, that the Eibishter reads our minds and knows what we're thinking, and he knows exactly who sinned and who didn't. As to move on, however, the question here is, was is the tsuneitig, the adgoshe, as the Eibishter is a lekeya ruchais l'chol basa? What's the addition in the pasuk, and it's emphasized that Hashem is the lekeya ruchais of every flesh? What are those two words, l'chol basa? Tzalib de taine, ha'ish echad yechtav al kol eida tiktzaif, as an introduction to ask and to beg Hashem, why is he getting angry at everyone? Referring to Hashem, that he's Yedei Machshavis. So therefore Hashem knows who to punish and who not. Without adding those two words, l'chol basar, for every flesh. Nachmer is this move on. The question regarding these two additional words here is even stronger. A state in Yerushalmi. In Yerushalmi it says the following halacha. As echad Hashemeya killas Hashem Yisrael, if you hear a klala on Hashem from a Yid, vechad Hashemeya mipia akum, or even if you hear from a guy, chayiv l'kraya, you're obligated to tear your clothing. My time, what's the reason? And the Yerushalmi quotes a pasuk where it says, Ani Hashem alekei kol basar, I am the God of all flesh, which includes even goyim. So das heißt, what do we see from this Yerushalmi? As alekei kol basar, these words kol basar, who is it referring to? Meant to koil sein euch nit Yidden. It includes even goyim. So if so, now we know what the words alekei basar is referring to. It refers to goyim. So is kasha b'nidin done? So the question over here becomes very strong. Das was the Eibishter is Yedei Machshavis afil fun nit Yidden l'chol basar. The fact that the Eibishter knows the thoughts of everybody, including non-Yidden as well. Was hat es fara shayches zu der Taine von ish echad yechta val kol eida Yidden tiktzaif? What's the connection here to the argument of Moshe and Aaron, where they're discussing the congregation of Yidden, that the Eibishter shouldn't punish all Yidden? So what's the emphasis of kol basar, referring to the fact that Hashem is the God of all flesh, including goyim? So Rebbe points out, Arat di Agdame, this introduction of saying the words kol basar, mit der Adgashe l'chol basar, what l'chayre gepasst by the Taine von Avram Avinu b'negetzus daim, was is endlich l'nitten di dan. This would belong in the conversation and the argument that Avram Avinu had with Hashem regarding the city of Zdaim. where there's a similar discussion that Avraham Avinu has with the Eibishter, like Moshe and Aaron here, that he's arguing with Hashem not to kill the people and not to turn over the city of Zdain. Ha'af tispet tzadikim rasha. Are you going to wipe out a tzaddik along with a rasha? Was dort retzach wegen nit Yidden. There, of course, it's speaking about non-Jews. Aber dort wird es im Ganzen nicht demant, in der Rede von Avraham Avinu. There it doesn't mention this expression of Kol Basar, that the Eibishter is the God of Kol Basar. Hat noch Messiah gewähnt, Hashefit Kol Ha'aretz Lo Yaseh Mishpat. The judge of the entire land will not do justice. But this expression of Kol Basar is not mentioned. Why is it mentioned specifically here in this story of Kairach when we're talking about Kol Ha'eder only regarding Yidden? V'habir, so the Rebbe says, the explanation here is as follows. And here the Rebbe will begin explaining what exactly is the basis of the argument of Moshe and Aaron that the Eibusher should not kill the entire congregation that was fighting. The Taine Bechlolos, generally speaking, what was the argument from Moshe and Aaron is Bashtanan and them consists of the following. As vi bald, der Eibusher b'yidiyasoi v'ashkachosoi aprotis, veis klor, ves is gewende choyte mamish zwischen Hadas Kairach. So now, they're saying to the Eibusher, Hashem looks very specifically and knows exactly and precisely who is the one that actually sinned amongst this congregation that was with Kairach. On Azaza is given Noreina. And this was only one individual, only Kairach is the true sinner. It's really only one person that sins. So the basis of Moshe and Aaron's argument is the Eibishter's Ashkacha Pratis. The fact that the Eibishter looks very specifically and knows exactly and precisely who exactly is the sinner and who not. Even though it seems like the entire congregation falls into the same camp, in the same category, they're all fighting and screaming against Moshe Rabbeinu, but the Eibishter sees and looks very specifically, Bashkacha Pratis, who is the true sinner here. And what does this mean? What does this mean that there's only one true sinner? I mean, they all fought, they all came and argued with Moshe Rabbeinu. So the Rebbe explains, and this is something we learned last year in the Sikh in Chelek Yud Gimel, it was once explained at length in the Beer from the Mashal was Rashi bringt da. So there's the Mashal Rashi brings there, Melech Basar V'Dam, a king of flesh and blood, Shesarcha Alav Miktsas Medina. Part of the people, part of the citizens in the country committed an offense against the king. But any day he doesn't know who's the real sinner. Lefichach keshu kayis, when the king gets angry, nifra mikulam, he punishes all of them. Avalato, but you Hashem, so you can see who's the real sinner, and you know who sinned. So what does Rashi really mean? What does this mean that there's only one sinner here? As das is Masber, what this mashal explains is, as the Adas Kairach, the entire congregation are not real sinners in the sense of they didn't really want to rebel against Hashem. Nor, they were persuaded and drawn into this by Kairach. Kairach came and convinced them that he's here for them and he's standing up for their rights, fighting for them and so on. So they were drawn by Kairach, but they really had no interest in rebelling against Hashem. So they're not true sinners. Und die Rebbe sind sie nicht in dem Zug von Chayte. They're not the sinners, not in an Eufen von Sarcha Olav, Mitzas Medina, Asirchain. Sirchain, Asarcha means that there's something which was an offense, something that was inappropriate, but it's not directly rebelling against Hashem. But there's only one individual. Kairach is the perpetrator, and he's really the one that's rebelling against Hashem. That's what Moshe and Aaron were arguing to Hashem, that Hashem should look specifically and distinguish between the real sinner and the rest of the people. Und das ist sehr teine. Wie bald das Rebbe ist Jidea Machshavas. Hashem sees our thoughts. Und is mavchin zwischen Achayte und Sirchen. Hashem sees the difference between Achayte or Achet and a Sirchen, which is just an offense, but it's not really a rebellion. As Achayte, Meiret Mamish is given Noreina. Who's the one that's really rebelling? That's only one individual. Ha'ish Echad Yechta, Ha'ish Echad Hu Achayte. Und hat es Geirem given, he causes the entire thing. Und bemeile euch schuldig in dem Sirchen von dem ganzen Meide. He is the one that's at fault and has to take responsibility for everything that what happened with the entire congregation that followed him. Darf doch der Eibishter euch benegedem einisch machalik sein zwischen Sirchain und Chet und Bastrafen nor dem Chayte. And therefore in the punishment, the difference should also be clear that only the one that truly sinned, Kairach, that truly rebelled, he should be punished, and not the other Yidden, not the rest of the congregation that followed along with him that was persuaded by him. That's the pshat and what the Moshe and Aaron are begging Hashem to make this distinction. Und damit is move on, for was me gefind nit at die Agdame Elekeya Ruchais Echayetze Bezel. We don't find this expression of the Eibishter being Elekeya Ruchais, that he reads the minds and sees what a person is thinking, by Tainus Avram Avinu. When Avram Avinu is arguing with Hashem not to turn over the city of Sodom. Weil dorten is given nor the Chilik von Tzaddik and Rasha. There, Avram Avinu is arguing that there are Tzaddikim and there are Rishayim. So there's a difference between a Tzaddik and a Rasha. And he was arguing about their actual external behavior that you can openly and clearly see. As is nit given dem Sog von Sorchu, he didn't have this category where it's a gray area where they committed an offense, but it's not clear if they were really rebelling or not. Und b'meile is nit negeya the ideas of machshava kedei zum afgezayn zwischen sirchen and chet. It's not necessary to ask Hashem to look deeper and to see who truly sinned and who didn't. So this is in general what's going on over here. It's the Ashkacha Pratis of the Eibishter to look and see exactly who is the real perpetrator, who is the real sinner and one that's rebelling, and who's not. Like them, based on this, as Oich Meduyik was Rashi Gzokta, the wording of Rashi is also precise when Rashi says, the Loshen, the language, Yideya Machshavas. The Eibishter knows the thoughts. V'yideya ata mi'achayte. And Hashem knows who the sinner is. And when Hashem responds to Moshe, Hashem says, Ani Yideya, I know. Unutzt nit dem Loshen Yodua. Rashi does not use the expression of Yodua, which means it is known. Why would Rashi use that expression? That's the more common expression used in Chazal all over. That it's open and known to Hashem, to the one that created the world, what's going on in the world. It's known. So there are two expressions here. One is Yoideya, he knows, and one is Yadua, it's known. And the Rebbe will explain the difference between them. So why does Rashi here choose a different language that Chazal usually say? Ubefrat, as Rashi allein hoipta on mit Loshen, Rashi begins this whole statement with Lefanecha gluyois kol hamachshavis. It's open and known to you all of the thoughts of people. So why doesn't Rashi conclude with the same type of style of writing this? That it's known to you. Why does Rashi switch it to that Hashem knows? So, what's really the difference between using the expression of Hashem knows, more directly, that Hashem actually knows, or Yadua, that it's known? So the Rebbe explains. The explanation here is as follows. Es is Yadua, as is Enefaran, Zvei Madregis, and the Yediyah Vashgochal Yaina. There are two different levels in the knowledge of Hashem. So the knowledge of Hashem is applied to creation in two different ways. Aleph, one is the Yediyah und Ashgache in the Oifen von Gole Yedua. Hashem knows, and that's said in this expression, that it's known to him. It's open and known to him, which means nit bederech eslapshus. This is not where Hashem is involved in the actual entity of creation itself and knows directly in the eslapshus of creation of what's going on. Nor hakoil Gole Yedua lefonav yizbarach memele. It's known to him, it's known to Hashem, without directly paying attention. It just is known, automatically. Hashem knows everything that goes on. So which is a completely different kind of a knowledge. We're not talking about a knowledge where Hashem interacts and sees and looks to know, where there's a pu'ul of yidiyah, but rather where Hashem knows. Because Hashem is so great and so unlimited, so there's nothing that's hidden from him. Everything is known to him. So this is an automatic knowledge that Hashem has. Now, what's the difference if it's a yidiyah b'derech eslapshus, where Hashem pays attention, or it's a yidiyah b'derech memela? The difference is not whether Hashem knows every single detail. When you're looking and you're paying attention, and that's how you know. There's a pu'ula of knowing. So over here, the entity of what you're connecting to know, so every detail matters and every detail you know. Whereas if it's Goli v'Yudua, that Hashem in His world, in His reality, automatically knows everything. He doesn't have to go down to see and look. So maybe you would think the difference is that over there on this level, Hashem knows on a more general sense, but He doesn't see and know every single detail. That's not the difference. No. Even on this level of Goli v'Yudua, that Hashem in His reality, in His world, is bligvul and knows everything automatically. He knows everything kol prat to prat, every single detail. However, even here where Hashem is aware and knows of every single detail, however, it's not direct. It's not Hashem enclothing himself and involving himself in the Metzius of creation. In Ivraim, und is movil von sei. Hashem remains, it's a knowledge where Hashem knows while he remains completely separated from creation. This is Hashem in his own reality, so to speak, where Hashem is removed of everything. Mitzad his kayach of bli gvul, Hashem knows everything. He knows every single detail, but separated, removed of everything that's going on in the world. The Riber is this an anoifen was nemt tarom alle nevraim b'shava. This is a kind of a knowledge that although every single detail is known, however, the significance of every detail of what's known is all the same. The greatest and the most significant detail and the most minute and petty detail, it's all one and the same thing. Because the actual reality of the world, where things are more important or less important, doesn't matter here. It's all in Hashem's reality, where because of Him being so unlimited, He knows everything. And there in Hashem's reality, the greatest and the smallest detail are all one and the same. So yes, He knows everything, but all b'shaveh, in the same way. Und es ist hecher von dem, als dort sollen Peugim sein. This is a level of knowledge where Hashem does not interact, does not come down. There's no tzimtzum here where He connects on a level that what's going on in creation matters and creates a blemish. This is Hashem's knowledge where He remains totally removed. Kaviyachol, so to speak. Maisa tachteinim, that the actions below here should matter to them. That it should make any difference to that level of knowledge where it's goli v'yadua, anything that goes on, the various different levels, or even a pagam, none of this matters over here. This is a level of goli v'yadua in the Eibishter's reality, to himself, b'derech memela. That's one kind of a knowledge. Beis, another level of yediyah here is the yediyah v'ashgache in a moifen von yodeya. When the Eibishter knows and sees that He's directly coming down to know what's going on in our reality, in the Metzius of the world. Hashem is coming down, occupying Himself into this reality of what's happening here. He encloses Himself, He involves Himself to see, to come down what's happening in this reality. It's a different kind of a knowledge. It's more direct, it's a yirida, it's a tzimtzum here. Und in dem seine Faran chilukim in em oifen ha'yidiyah v'ashgache. So over here, in this idea, so there's a difference in every level and every detail, all the things that matter. The reality of what goes on in the world, where every prata, things that are more significant, things that are less significant, on this level of knowledge where Hashem is involved in the metzius of the creation, so the significance of every detail definitely takes up a space. It has its very various levels. The hesem, so the madrege von jeder nivra, according to the level of each created being. The Riber, so the difference is, wer dafke von der Yediyah nimshach der Inyan von schar v'oinish bedarges sheines lefi ma'isat tachteinim. It's this interaction of Hashem with creation, it's this knowledge and ashgacha of Hashem of creation, which is the source of Hashem giving reward or punishment according to the actions of what people are doing. Because this is a level where Hashem directly comes down and interacts with our reality over here. That's what yoideya in a more direct manner means. And das is, so now based on what we said before, that Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe and Aaron are speaking to Hashem and are arguing that Hashem comes and sees and knows, they're talking about this einish that Hashem is about to bring on the congregation of Kairach. So therefore Rashi, and this is what Rashi is medayik, yoideya. Rashi uses the term yoideya, that Hashem knows, unit yodua, and not that it's known to Him in His reality. Weil da is negeya die idee v'ashgacha pratis von welches vet nimshach schar v'einish. Here, what's relevant is their argument that Hashem knows directly and He's involved and He sees over here what's significant in our reality, and therefore there's a schar v'einish for what goes on over here. That's what we're talking about. Who Hashem should punish and who not. Und nochmer, and even more so as we said before, the idea. In Anoifen von Eslapshus, Hashem comes down and involves Himself. Von Areinton sich in Protea und Yonim, von Adas Kairach, to come and look very specifically in the details of the people that were with Kairach, bis zu Meidiyah sein, and to let know, verses Bagangem Bloiza Sirchain, who's the one that just committed an offense but didn't really rebel, und Mia Chaite, and who's the real sinner, who's the real one that's rebelling over here. That's why Rashi uses the term Yedeya, the more direct Ashgacha Pratis of the Eibishter that's involved in the Metzius of the world, where the reality of the world is Teifis Makim, for the union of Schar V'Einish and so on. So this is the explanation, b'chlalos, of Moshe Rabbeinu's argument. But now the Rebbe brings in the Shitta of the Rambam, and l'chayre, according to the Rambam, there is no Hashgacha Pratis of the Eibishter in this case, in this way. As is Yidua the Shitta from Rambam in Moira Nevuchim. The Rambam says in the Moira Nevuchim as follows: as not if the Mina Adam is the Hashgacha Pratis, that only on human beings is there Hashgacha Pratis. Hashgacha, if a Prati, is the Mensch, where Hashem is looking specifically and guiding matters in the life of every specific individual. Aber by the Nevram from Daimim Tzemeach Chai, when it comes to the other parts of creation, of Daimim Tzemeach and Chai, is the Hashgacha of Klalas Amin. Here, the Hashgacha of the Eibishter is only on the general species. Nit of Zeh Bazundere Pratim. Hashem is guiding and seeing to it that this min should continue to function and exist, but the specific incidents that happen to every particular animal, every particular blade of grass, every particular leaf that falls down, that's not over there. The Rambam simply is saying that there is no Hashgacha Pratis on this. And not only that, even more so, even regarding the human being, is the Hashgacha nitef alam b'shava. The Hashgacha Pratis of Hashem is not by everyone equally. Nor says Leut that dveikus from seichel adam zum Eibishten. It will depend on the level of dveikus, how much a person is connected in his mind and in his aveda to Hashem. On the sichlim hamamrim, those foolish individuals that are rebelling against Hashem. On the rishayim, the wicked people, was by zeh is in ganz in the dodid dveikus haseichel and elokos, so they are not connected to Hashem in any way. Is that Eibishter von Zeh misalik Hashgacha Pratis. Hashem removes of them this individual Hashgacha, paying attention and providing every specific detail for every particular person. This does not apply to these Rishayim. Und the Hashgacha of Zeh is al derech v'yev daimim tzemeach chai. And therefore they then fall into the category of the Hashgacha of Hashem, like it is by everything else in creation, and like based on what it says in the Pasuk in Tilim, Nimshal kabehemis nidbu, that the Rishayim are compared to animals. Hashgacha klalis. There's only a general Hashgacha of the Eibishter on these people. On via state, there's another pasuk that's the source for this, like it says in Parshas Vayelech. Ve'starti panai mehem. Hashem says, "I'll conceal my face from them, from these Rishayim. Umatzuhu rois rabbeis v'tzares geime." And it will befall them, or it will occur to them, these terrible things and these terrible tzares. Al ki'ena l'kai bekirbi mitzauni rois ha'ela. So therefore, these terrible things occurred to me. So the pasuk uses the term matzu'uhu, mitzauni, that it occurs, it happens. What does this mean? Nothing just happens. Isn't everything b'hashgacha pratis from the Eibishter? So this is precisely what the pasuk, according to the Rambam, is saying here. Dorich dem, was Yidden reißen sich ab vom Eibishten, when a Yid cuts himself off, God forbid, from Hashem, werden sie mufker lemikre. So now Hashem, so to speak, responds in the same way and cuts himself off from Yidden, and then he allows them to be ownerless to any incident that could happen to them. The Hashgacha Pratis of Hashem is removed from them. Und die Tzaris kommen auf sie b'derech Metzia. And then terrible things happen to them, just occurring, just befalling them. Ki'ilu von sich allein, like it's happening on its own. So this is the source where we see that Rishayim fall in the same category of Hashgacha Klalis, like the Daimim Tzemeach and Chai. So now, applying that over here, regarding the congregation of Kairach, so these were Rishayim. So seemingly over here, regarding these Rishayim, there was no Hashgacha Pratis. The Eibishter is going to behave with them in this way of mitzauhu, mufkarim lemikre, that the Eibishter lets them just go and whatever happens to them, happens to them. But now, what exactly is going on over here? Don't we see that Hashem is paying very specific attention to these people? And Hashem is coming to punish them in a very, very specific way? So the Rebbe explains, Vibalt, as the Hashgacha of Rishayim is al derech of daimim tzemeach chai. So according to the Rambam, Hashem's Hashgacha on Rishayim is the same like it is with daimim tzemeach and chai. Blois Hashgacha klalis. The Eibishter just is looking in general on the species, not on the specific individual. Is verstandig. So from this we understand, as a fil when ze werden nenash mulmaila. Even if it is a situation where you clearly see that Hashem is paying specific attention and there is a specific einish that Hashem is punishing them. And not like described before, that Hashem lets them go and allows them to be prone and vulnerable to anything that's going on in the world to come and harm them. So seemingly in such a case, sometimes Hashem chooses to pay attention specifically even to Rishayim and punish them directly. It's clear that this is a punishment that is coming from above for these Rishayim. That's exactly what the case is over here by the Adas Kairach. Bria Yivra Avaya. What could be more of a specific attention that Hashem is paying to them, that Hashem is creating the opening of the ground to punish them? So l'chayra over here, even according to the Rambam, by these Rishayim, you see that Hashem is specifically paying attention to them. So the Rebbe explains, no, even over here, according to the Rambam, there's only a hashgacha klalis regarding the decision who to punish and who not to punish. Is aber the einish v'anhagim mitzay, the punishment and the way Hashem behaves with these Rishayim, nit in a prati is the genaifen. Hashem is not going to pay attention in the same way to every individual on his level like he does when there's hashgacha pratis. Nor in an eifen klali. He looks at them and judges them and decides whether to punish or not in a more general sense. Und al derech, wie der Rambam schreibt dort, and the Rambam explains this, as sichlem hamamrim, those foolish people that rebel against Hashem, sudru b'seide shar ishe mine balichaim, they enter into the category of all the other animals, umipnei zeh hayakal lahargam. And therefore, once they fall into that categories of all the other animals, so now there's a lighter standard used to kill them, to punish them. Meaning, even if it's true that the actual punishment is something where Hashem is specifically doing it and creating this bria to punish them, but the standard of what is being used to judge these Rishayim, they fall into the same category and the same standard as the behemoths, where Kalahargam, where the standard is not so high like it is by tzaddikim and people that are dovik and Hashem, and therefore Kalahargam. So if so, over here, according to the Rambam, Benegeta Das Kairach, these Rishayim, so seemingly there is no Hashgacha Pratis of Hashem in them. Und Leute Shitte is l'chayre nit muvan die Taine Elekeya Ruchais Eishechad Yachtav al Kolei the Tiktsaif. That Moshe and Aaron are arguing, why is Hashem getting angry at the entire congregation if there's really only one person that rebelled? Wie bald, das ist nicht da kein Hashgacha Pratis of sie. There is no Hashgacha Pratis in them. Nor Hashgacha Klalis, al derech wie de Tzach. There's only a general hashgacha like the other categories in creation. Hat doch nicht kein Art zu mannen, als der Eibischte soll sich zu sehr herabtragen mit das Slapschuss. If so, there's no room to demand of Hashem that he should come and pay attention and lower himself, so to speak, and specifically look and see Fanandetelen to distinguish zwischen die was blois sarchu und der Chayte Mamish, who just committed an offense and who is really the one that's rebelling. Hashem creates a lighter standard for these Rishayim, and they fall into the standard of animals, and Hashem will come and wipe them all out. So what's the taina of Moshe and Aaron that Hashem should apply his Hashgacha Pratis to these individuals? So this is the question here according to the Rambam. Aber in Emerson, but now the truth, however, is es ist nicht kein Kushya. This is not a question. Und das wird werden verstandig, Leute, was the Mittler Rebbe is mevayer. This is explained according to what the Mittler Rebbe says. As das, was der Rambam halt, this opinion here of the Rambam, as es is nicht doch in Hashgacha Pratis of Daimim Tzemei Chai. The Rambam comes and says that really there is no Hashgacha Pratis in the world at large regarding Daimim Tzemei Chai. Und al derech zeh nit auf Rishayim. And similar also on Rishayim, there is no Hashgacha Pratis. So the Mittler Rebbe tells us is nit kein stire. This is not a contradiction to Shittas HaBaal Shem Tov, to the famous Chiddush and opinion of the Baal Shem Tov, as es ist da Hashgacha Pratis of alle Nevraim, that there's a very specific Hashgacha of Hashem on every single creature, including the Daimim, the Tzemeach, and the Chai, as the famous Vart that said from the Baal Shem Tov, that even when you have one leaf that falls in the middle of a forest, there's a Hashgacha Pratis of the Eibishter regarding how and which position this leaf falls to the ground, and it's negayah to the entire Bria. And the Eibishter is looking and orchestrating exactly what's going on. That's the shit of the Baal Shem Tov. So the Mittler Rebbe tells us the opinion of the Rambam is not a contradiction to the shit of the Baal Shem Tov. How is that? Weil in der Hashgacha al Yaina zene faran bechlalos zwei Eifanim. Because the Hashgacha Pratis of the Eibishter in the world, there are two ways how it reaches us here below in this world. So these are two Eifanim benigeh to how the Hashgacha Pratis comes to us. Before the Rebbe was speaking about the Yediyah and the Hashgacha Mulmaila from the Eibishter's perspective, whether it's Yodua or Yodeya. Now the Rebbe speaks about the two Eifanim regarding how that Hashgacha Pratis reaches us. What are the two Eifanim? Aleph, one is Hashgacha Pnimis. a deeper ashgacha, a more direct ashgacha, meaning the ashgacha is begilui. The Eibishter is paying attention and orchestrating matters clearly and openly. Das heißt, sie ist nicht behalten und verdeckt durch levushi ateva, where the Eibishter is paying attention and orchestrating everything in our life in a way that it's not covered over any garments of nature. We clearly see Hashem's involvement in everything that's going on in our life. It's regarding this type of ashgacha, an open and direct ashgacha, sagt der Rambam, as he is leut the dveikus von seichel adam belakos. To what degree it's going to be open and direct will depend on how much of dveikus, how much you're connected to godliness. By daimim tzmeachai and rishayim is nitod ashgacha. By the rest of creation and by the shayim, this level of ashgacha, which is open and clear and direct, it does not exist. In an oifen prati, no, if in klolis amin, there is an open and direct ashgacha, how you see Hashem making sure that the min continues to function, that you clearly see. But the individual ashgacha regarding every individual blade of grass and every individual animal, it comes through teva. You don't see that open ashgacha pratis of the Eibishter unless it's an entity which has dveikus. That's the ashgacha pnimis. Ashgacha chetzainis. But then there's ashgacha chetzainis. What does the word chetzainis here mean? And as external ashgacha, the ashgacha is melubish behelen in levushi ateva v'chayetze bezeh. The ashgacha of Hashem is very specific on every individual. However, this ashgacha of the Eibishter comes through the garments of nature. It's covered, it's concealed in nature. Und die ashgacha is faran auf alle nevraim. It's this type of ashgacha of Hashem which is here by all creations. Masim, l'shittas of Baal Shem Tov, exactly like the shit of the Baal Shem Tov, that there's a ashgacha pratis on every single blade of grass and every single thing that happens in the world. So, but this is ashgacha chetzainis. This is ashgacha that comes through nature. So if so, kumt achais, so that comes out as oichle das Rambam, is faran ashgacha pratis of Rishayim. The Rambam agrees that there is a ashgacha pratis even on Rishayim. So it's not as bezei, it's das ashgacha chetzainis. It's a kind of ashgacha that's external. What does it mean? Ongetan und verheilen und levushi ateva v'chulu. It's enclosed and covered in the garments of nature. Azoi, as es is nit nicker, wie jeder prat kommt von dem Eibishter. We can't notice the fact that every detail happening in the world comes from Hashem, but really, every single detail is being orchestrated by the Eibishter through the garments of nature. Now, the Rambam though brought before the Psukim, Matza'uhu, Mitza'uni, that the Eibishter leaves Yidden, Mufker, ownerless, and allows things to happen to them. They are vulnerable to the ways of the world and creation. So what does that mean? That these things occur to Yidden. Und wie der Rambam teaches us up as mismufke lemifkre, that Yidden are not totally vulnerable to anything to occur to them. Is bashgacha pratis. This itself, that Yidden now are, so to speak, vulnerable to the ways of nature, this itself is bashgacha pratis. What does it mean? We have to look at what it says in the beginning of the pasuk. The pasuk says Hashem conceals himself. It says nit kein siluk ashgacha. What does this mean? It's not that Hashem removes his ashgacha of creation or of rishayim, nor it says blois ve'starti panai. Hashem conceals panai, a hester of the ashgacha pnimis, that open and direct ashgacha that you should notice and see the hands of Hashem and everything in your life. That type of ashgacha, it will become concealed. Bis wann a Mensch kann sich einreden, als seine Tzores and an Aneufen von Mitzoni. A person could convince himself that whatever Tzores are happening to him are just occurring just because of the ways of nature. As is minig ha'ilam, or the nikris, it's just because of what's going on in the world. It's just an occurrence that happened and there's no source that's orchestrating this. So that's the way it seems to the person. Aber be'emes is the ashgacha al yaina oirdan al kol prat uprat. Even then, the ashgacha of the Eibishter is on every single detail, on every single person, even the Rishayim. It's just a hester, where the Eibishter covers his pnimius that you don't clearly and directly see the Eibishter's involvement. So now, api kol hanal, based on everything that we explained there, is move on the shayches from the Akdome elkei aruchais l'chol basar. Why Moshe, not in arguing with Hashem, add these words, l'chol basa, that Hashem knows the thoughts and sees bashgacha pratis, what's going on by every individual, every flesh. To the taino ish echad yachtav al kol eda tiktzik, when they were arguing that Hashem shouldn't kill the entire congregation of Kairach. We get frier, so as we explained before, zen di verta lekei kol basar. What are these words kol basar referring to? Kailol oichanit yidin. It includes also not Yidden. And with the Rogat Shover is mefarish and pasuk ani Hashem alekei kol basar. As the Rogat Shover explains the pasuk, that it says that Hashem is alekei kol basar. Miyusad from Oben the mountain Yerushalmi, based on the Yerushalmi quoted before. So the Rogatchover specifically relates this to the subject we're speaking about here. It's in this pasuk where you see that Hashem is mashgiach b'ashgacha pratis even on Goyim, even on Bnei Noach. So this is what Moshe and Aaron are bringing in over here. The Alekei Kol Basar. Und das ist die Yesod von Tainus Moshe and Aaron. So this is the basis of Moshe and Aaron's argument. As the Eibishter darf sich vernehmen, bei von Prati, Hashem has to occupy himself and look very specifically zum Mechalik sein zwischen die, was Sarcha alav und dem Chayte. Who are the ones that are only Sarcha and who is the real sinner? Hagam as alle sind in dem Sog von Sichlim und Rishayim. Even though the entire congregation falls into the category of foolish people and Rishayim. So if they're Rishayim, according to the Rambam, they're in the same category as the rest of the Daimim Tzemeach and Chai, Nimshak and Behemis Nidmu, so therefore there is no Ashgacha Pratis for them. But nevertheless, even according to the Rambam, the Chiddush here is Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, yes, they are Rishayim, but nevertheless, even for these Rishayim that are usually in the category of the Goyim, while there is Ashgacha Pratis. Wie bald der Eibishter is Yedei Machshavis, Euch von Ben Noach, and Oichav is da Ashgacha Pratis. Because the truth is that even for a Ben Noach, Hashem does do everything and orchestrates everything with a specific Ashgacha Pratis. Chach, as by Zeh, is Nida di Dveikas HaSeichel and Lakos. Although they are lacking the connection to Hashem, it comes through Teva, as the Rebbe explained before, it's a Ashgacha Chitzainis, but it's a Ashgacha Pratis. It's Allah has kama v'kama, so most definitely, as the Eibishter is Yedeya, Machshavas, Mashgiach, and an Eifim Prati from Yidden, the Eibishter looks and sees very specifically everything that's happening regarding Yidden. Afila by Azelache was an Begoloi Opgeris and Rachman al-Etzam von Elikos, even by such individuals that on a revealed level are completely cut off of godliness. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu is arguing, that the Ashgacha Pratis of the Eibishter does apply l'chol basar, to all Yidden, including these Rishayim. Like it does regarding Goyim Lahavdil, that the Eibishter Ashgacha Pratis applies even to them. Now, Hagam as Venayid is nit oiser etzainish almakim. Although, based on everything we learned here, it comes out that when a Yid does not fulfill Hashem's will, is the Ashgacha Oifim al derech vid Ashgacha Oifim Misailam. So now there is the Ashgacha Pratis on this Yid, but the type of Ashgacha Pratis by him is similar to the Ashgacha Pratis of Goyim. In what sense? As we explained, the Ashgacha Chitzainis, this is an external Ashgacha, meaning versus Melubish and Levusha Yateva Kanal. This is an Ashgacha that functions and enters through the ways of nature. But von deswegen, the truth is da Chiluk Ikri zwischen der Eifena Slapshus and the Ashgacha Efayiden und Lahavdil Evumesailam. There's a huge difference, and a very fundamental difference, in the Ashgacha Pratis of the Eibishter that comes through nature by a Goy, and Lahavdil the way it is by a Yid. What's the difference? By Sailam, when it comes to Goyim, Vibalt, Zeye, Yenike, V'chayis is von Bechinas Chetzainius. So in the first place, where do they get their level of Chayis from? They're part of the creation of the world, and therefore they get their level, their nourishment and their Chayis from a level of Chetzainius. What is that? Shem Elikim. They're created and get their chayas from, like everything else in the creation, Bereshis Bara Elikim, which is Begematria Teva, from a much lower level of godliness. So therefore, primarily, creation and the Goyim included in that are under the laws of nature. That's the source, that's the level, that's the source of their chayas. So therefore, is the Ashgacha of Zeh Lechatchila nor from Shem Elikim. The level of Hashem's Ashgacha comes from this place, from the level of Elikim, from der Madregen Elikos, versus Melubish and Darkei Teva, the level of Elikos, which is lower down, which is involved with nature, with the ways of nature. Da Kegen by Yidden, in contrast, when it comes to Yidden, the source of the life of a Yid is Avaya. Right? That's what a Yid is, a Chelek Avaya, Amay, a piece of Hashem. Is the Ashgacha Pratis of Zeh be'etzem for Shem Avaya Atzmai. No matter who he is, every single Yid, the Ashgacha Pratis of the Eibishter comes from Shem Avaya. Was is a Pnimiizdige und a Golidige Ashgacha, which is a very deep Ashgacha from a very high level, and it actually also comes down in a way that you could notice it. You could see the direct hand of Hashem and everything that's going on in the person's life, including even by the Rishayim. It doesn't change. The source of the Chayis of a Yid and the Ashgacha Pratis of a Yid is, even if he's from the Rishayim, is also from Shem Avaya. So now, what's the distinction between the Rishayim and the Tzadikim regarding this Hashgacha Pratis. If regardless, the Hashgacha Pratis by a Yid is always coming from the name Havaya. Und das, was die Yidden, was eine nit eisen et zeinischel makim. So this that we said before, that the Rishayim, that are not doing Hashem's will, is the Hashgacha Pratis of Zei behelem in levushi teva. So it becomes concealed in nature. Meint es nit as lagabe Zei, stalik chas v'shalom the Hashgacha from Shem Havaya. It doesn't mean that this level of Hashgacha from the higher level from Shem Havaya is removed. Warum in welchem Matzev Yidden sollen sich gefinnen, sollen sie allemal am kreuwei legabe Shem Havaya. Regarding what the Yidden, whatever level the Yid is on, the close nation, the direct connection of a Yid to Hashem is always there. And a Yid is always connected to Havaya. The expression of Chazal, ben kach o ben kach bonayim. Either way, these are my children. So what's the distinction here? No, the Hashgacha is von Shem Havaya atzmai, wie sie is sich mislabish in Shem Elokim. It is Shem Havaya. It's the source of Shem Havaya. That is the source of their Hashgacha and their Chayis. But this Shem Havaya is coming through Shem Elokim. So it's a Shem Havaya which is mislabish in Shem Elokim, not a Hashgacha that starts with Shem Elokim. But this is the Diya Colossians. So as we pointed out before, this is what the pasuk means when it says Ve'starti panai, that Eibishter conceals himself. So it's not a hester of panai, of the Hashgacha Pnimis kanal. It's only concealing the real Hashgacha Pnimis that exists by Yidden. But it's only a concealment. But that Hashgacha from Shem Havaya is still there. So now, the Rebbe before said that because the connection is still to Shem Havaya, so therefore there's a deeper Hashgacha by every Yid, but the Rebbe also emphasized it's a Goli Diga Hashgacha. How could you say it's a Goli Diga Hashgacha? It's open, it's revealed to see the Eibishter's involvement in the life of a Yid, even by a Rasha. Und der Rebbe, so therefore the fact is, kemen durch his beinenus besichloi, de grunteven sich und de kennen as es Hashgacha Pratis. Even by Rishayim, even if it's not as open and as direct to see as it is by the tzaddikim and those that have dveikas, that you don't even need any isbainus. You can clearly see their connection and how Hashem is orchestrating things in their life. But even by Rishayim, if you pay attention, you look deeper into how their life is going, the grunteven, you look and analyze what's going on in their life, you'll see the Hashgacha Pratis of Hashem. You could notice it. Und durch dem wird sie euch geluya al kol prat to prat von jeden Yidden. And by this itself that you notice it, so then you're revealing, you see this Hashgacha Pratis that comes from Shem Havaya. Euch von die, wir sind nit eisen et zeinecholo. Even by those Yidden that are Rishayim. So there's a fundamental difference here between the Hashgacha Pratis by a Yid and Lahavdil by a Guy. By a Guy, it begins with the level of Shem Elokim. It's in nature, it's under the laws of nature, and it's completely covered. And you can't see the hand of Hashem in this. Even through his baininus, you won't be able to really come to this. Whereas when it comes by Yidden, the source of the Hashgacha Pratis is always Havaya. Havaya has an external garment of Elokim that's covering it. But if you look with his baininus, you'll see openly the hand of Hashem in the life of a Yid, including even by a Rasha. The Mitzaych Musber, that Teichen from Tachlis in the Ranhage von Estarti Ponai. This will explain also what's the purpose of what the pasuk says, that when Yidden sin and he wants them to do tshuva, so what does Hashem do? He hides his face from Yidden and he brings tzaras. Was durch dem kemen sich einreden, and then what happens is you could make the mistake and convince yourself as die tzaras was kommen auf him sind in an Eufen von Mitzaoni von sich allein, that it just happened on its own. I'm vulnerable to nature. Nit von Eibishter, and it didn't happen from the Eibishter. That's what Hashem does when the Yidden sin. So the question here is, l'chayre kann man doch fragen, so the obvious question is, the kavane von der Anhage is doch, kedem eure sein Yidden zu tshuva. Why is Hashem bringing these things upon Yidden? To wake them up. It's a wake-up call that a Yid should come and do tshuva. Is wie kann a matzev von the histarti geimer, so how could this condition of Hashem hiding himself, and a Yid thinking that now things are just happening to him on its own, immer eure sein zu tshuva zum Eibischen. This kind of hanhag of Hashem should awaken a Yid to return, to reconnect to Hashem, if he doesn't even see and relate what's happening in his life coming from the Eibishter. The Eiser fehlt nicht, as die Yisurim seine Hashgacha Pratis von Eibishten und kann meinen, as es a nikre nikris. He doesn't even see b'chlal how the pain and suffering that he's experiencing is the Eibishter bringing it upon him to wake him up. Und nicht mit der Kavane zu wecken him to tshuva, and therefore he doesn't relate it to the purpose of what this is for, to awaken him to tshuva. So it seems like that the purpose that's supposed to be fulfilled through these Yisurim that are supposed to wake up a person, but Adarabba, now a person will think that, Hashem threw me away and so this has nothing to do with me anymore. So how is this bringing a person to tshuva? Not that Indian is kanal, but the answer based on what we said before. When Hashem hides himself, the Hashgacha Pratis comes through nature by a Yid, it's different than when the way it is by a guy. Vibalt as der Ve'estarti is no b'chitzonius. This that Hashem conceals himself is an external concealment. Aber b'pnimius is euch dan der Hashgacha v'shem avaya kol prat to prat. By a Yid, regardless who he is and whatever level, the Hashgacha of the Eibishter is on every single detail, and the Hashgacha still comes from Shem Havaya. The far is doing them the koyach zum eure sein by a Yidin atnu von Shuval Elokos. When a Yid will look and see and stop and pay attention to what's happening to him, he will notice and see the hands of the Eibishter in this pain and suffering, that it's a wake-up call to go and do tshuva. By a goy, it's totally covered and there's nothing that will draw him back. But by a Yid, because it's really the Eibishter that's behind it, that's trying to draw back and wake up his children to come and return to him, so the Yid will eventually come to notice and see the hands of Hashem, the purpose of what this is all about. V'adarab, on the contrary, v'bald, the Hashgacha d'Shem Havaya, is demult faran. So now the Rebbe says a deeper point here, that really, this Hashgacha, which really still comes from Shem Havaya, in this time when the Eibush is concealing himself, but the source remains of Shem Havaya, is demult faran, nitten shayches zu koiches hageluyim von Yidden. So the connection, the direct connection to Shem Havaya, is not there anymore in a revealed sense. In a revealed sense, you don't see the Eibish's connection directly. Says Vistarti, the Eibish is concealed. Nor b'negeya, sein atzmi is the gemuhos. The connection of the Eibish that remains in this matzav with Yidden is because of the very essence, the very identity of a Yid, that this is my children. That's the connection that remains in this matzav. So any other level of connection of Shem Havaya, where it's expressed usually in a revealed way, is not there. Now it's just the very essence that's connected. So in this time, when there's pain and suffering, and the goli connection, the open connection is not there, and there's the deeper connection of Shem Havaya, the essence and the very identity of the Yid, it touches the core of the Yid, and that's what comes out. So that's a deeper point here, that Adarab, Dafki here, there's a deeper level, a deeper element of this Hashgacha Pratis that's revealed there. And this is connected in general to the whole union of tshuva. As dafke de tshuva, it's specifically this type of tshuva was kommt mitzad oitzem arichok, when a yid does tshuva because of how far he was, and he had a yearning and longing to come and return. Ririt on and etzem anefesh mamish. This is because the very identity, the very core of the yid was woken up. Und das is negeya zu ihm. Das is negeya on his pile in klolos avidasai, and this is relevant, and this changes the entire avodah of the yid. This is because it's the essence. If the essence of the yid wakes up, the essence is the essence of his whole being. So therefore, this will transform his entire avodah. There is a tshuva that exists by tzaddikim, as we know Chassidus says that tshuva is not only kipshutoi, but even by tzaddikim there's a level of tshuva where a tzaddik goes higher and higher and returns to Hashem. But by tzaddikim, their level of tshuva, vazi is nitazenegeya in klolos avidasai. It's not a tshuva that comes from a person being cut off and very far, where it touches him to his core. He's close, he has a relationship with the Eibishter, he's taking it to the next level. Tshuva elevates a tzaddik even higher, but it doesn't necessarily transform the entire person, because it doesn't touch his very essence. As git notzu shleimus in sein Aveda, it only adds a certain dimension, a certain level to his Aveda. So it's this Hashgacha Pratis of the Eibishter, even by Rishayim, that touches a Yid in a very deep way and awakens him to come and do tshuva. So now the Rebbe takes this point and relates it back over here to the story of Kairach and the response of the Eibishter to Moshe and Aaron's Taina. The Eibishter said, Yofa Marta, the Rebbe will explain here what's the pshat in the Eibishter's response. Al Pizeh Zeich move on, their diak and the enful from the Eibishter to Moshe. This explains also the meaning of Moshe Rabbeinu's answer, of the Eibishter's answer to Moshe Rabbeinu. Yofa Marta ani yodeya umaydiya michota umiloichota. The Eibishter says, you've spoken well, and I know, and the Eibishter adds, I will let know as well who sinned and who did not know. So this is an addition that Moshe and Aaron didn't even ask about, that the Eibishter should let know. But the Eibishter adds that. What's the point? Es wird sein, what the Eibishter says, you know what will be? Nit nor wie sie haben geteinet. Not only what they were arguing for, as the Eibishter is Yedei Machshavas, that Hashem knows the thoughts. Hashgacha Pratis of alle Yidden, that the Eibishter Hashgacha Pratis is on all Yidden, afiloiv di sug von Adas Kairach, even like these people in the category of Adas Kairach, even the Shayim. Warum das ist voran bei Kol Basar, euch bei Yom Yisraelim Kanal. The Hashgacha Pratis of the Eibishter is on everybody, including even Goyim. Nor, there's even more here. Here we're talking about Rishayim that are Yidden, and therefore not ani ideya umaydiya michata mileichata. There's the Hashgacha Pratis, and it'll be Maidiya. Hashem will let know this Hashgacha Pratis, which means the Hashgacha Pratis wird sein in an Eifen Goli. By Yidden, this Hashgacha Pratis, even for Rishayim, comes out and is revealed. As alle wellen zen, the Einei Basar, everybody will clearly see wie der Eibishter vernimmt sich in a Pnimis de Hashgacha zu rateven adivas leichatu. The Eibishter is going to come and pay attention and specifically save those that did not sin. Chotsh bei zeh is gewen sarch, even though they committed an offense. That's the chiddush of the Maidiya. The Maidiya is the Eibishter explaining that no, regarding Rishayim, there's a more specific, open Hashgacha Pratis, because they're Yidden, even more than there is by the Goyim Lahavlo. This level of Hashgacha, where the Eibishter it comes from Havaya, and it's open and it's clear, as Oich Be'azasug mentioned, even by such people, soll sein the Hashgacha Pratis, that there should be the direct and open Hashgacha of the Eibishter. In an open goli mit a slapshus, in a revealed way, where the Eibishter is involved in orchestrating everything that's going on over here, even when he's punishing them, is the snar by Yidden. This is specifically the level of Hashgacha Pratis that there is by Yidden, by Am Kroivai Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by the nation close and the children of the Eibishter.